Karl Marx's The Communist Manifesto, published in 1848, stands as a critical juncture in the evolution of subversive thought, a conceptual fulcrum that synthesized earlier critiques of authority and propelled a diverse array of radical ideologies into the modern era. Emerging amid Europe's industrial upheaval, the manifesto distilled the tensions of its time into a potent critique of capitalism, channeling the philosophical and political currents of the past into a vision of revolutionary transformation. This essay explores the manifesto's role as a pivotal axis, weaving together the intellectual threads of prior subversive works, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's The Social Contract, 1762, and Thomas Paine's Common Sense, 1776, and radiating outward to influence later texts, including Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, 1971, Anton Levy's The Satanic Bible, 1969, and Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, 1925. By examining these texts, the analysis illuminates how the manifesto, through its synthesis of historical critiques and its provocation of new ideological paths, reshaped political and cultural discourse, serving as a catalyst for both emancipatory and destructive visions of societal change. The manifesto as a conceptual nexus. The Communist Manifesto, co-authored by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in 1848, emerged during a period of seismic industrial and social transformation, when the rise of factories, urban sprawl, and labor exploitation exposed the fault lines of European society. The text framed history as a dynamic interplay of class antagonisms, with capitalism's dependence on wage labor and profit-driven systems creating contradictions that would precipitate its downfall. Its theory of historical materialism posited that economic structures drive societal evolution, casting the proletariat as the vanguard of revolutionary change. The manifesto's vision of abolishing private property and forging a classless society challenged the ideological and material foundations of bourgeois dominance, blending philosophical critique with a call to action. Its lucid, impassioned prose, translated into numerous languages, ignited movements like the 1848 revolutions, the Paris Commune of 1871, and the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. The rallying cry, "Workers of the world, unite!" transcended national boundaries, resonating in labor unions, socialist movements, and anti-colonial struggles across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. By synthesizing Enlightenment ideals of individual agency and collective governance with a rigorous economic analysis, the manifesto became a conceptual nexus, distilling the subversive impulses of the past into a focused critique that inspired a spectrum of radical thought. Its influence permeated intellectual debates, from university lecture halls to revolutionary cells, and grassroots activism, from factory strikes to peasant uprisings. The text's ability to articulate a universal challenge to power dynamics ensured its enduring impact, shaping ideologies from socialism to anarchism. As the axis of this analysis, the Communist Manifesto provides a lens to explore how it wove together earlier critiques of authority and unleashed a proliferation of subversive ideas, from philosophical treatises to practical strategies, redefining the contours of political and cultural rebellion across centuries. Enlightenment foundations. Rousseau's Social Contract. Jean-Jacques Rousseau's The Social Contract, published in 1762, laid a philosophical cornerstone for subversive thought during the Enlightenment, a period marked by growing skepticism toward monarchical absolutism. Rousseau posited that legitimate political authority arises from the general will, a collective expression of citizens' shared interests, rather than divine sanction or hereditary privilege. This concept struck at the heart of Europe's feudal order, where monarchs claimed divine right to rule. His vision of a society grounded in mutual obligation and participatory governance proposed that individuals relinquish certain freedoms only to secure collective justice, not to bolster tyrannical power. Rousseau's critique of arbitrary authority exposed the moral and structural flaws of systems where wealth and lineage dictated influence, challenging the ideological underpinnings of 18th-century hierarchies. This philosophical rebellion fueled the French Revolution, which sought to dismantle aristocratic dominance, and inspired democratic movements across Europe, the Americas, and beyond. Rousseau's emphasis on collective sovereignty prefigured Marx's vision of unified resistance against oppressive systems, though his work remained rooted in theoretical exploration rather than economic critique. By dismantling the legitimacy of monarchical power, the social contract fostered a culture of dissent that reverberated through subsequent centuries. Its influence shaped the American Revolution, informing debates on liberty and governance, and resonated with thinkers like Robespierre, who drew on its principles during the French Revolution. The text's exploration of the balance between individual rights and collective authority provided a conceptual reservoir for later subversive thought, feeding into the intellectual currents that Marx would synthesize in the Communist Manifesto. Rousseau's work underscores the power of philosophical ideas to challenge entrenched norms, laying a foundation for the economic and political critiques that would define the manifesto's revolutionary vision. Revolutionary mobilization. Paine's Common Sense. Thomas Paine's Common Sense, published in 1776, transformed subversive ideas into a practical catalyst for revolution, galvanizing American colonists to reject British colonial rule. Written in clear, compelling prose, the pamphlet framed independence as a moral and rational imperative, portraying monarchy as an antiquated system that violated natural rights. Paine's appeal to ordinary citizens, farmers, artisans, laborers, democratized Enlightenment principles, empowering a broad audience to envision self-governance. Selling over 100,000 copies in its first year, Common Sense became a cultural phenomenon, driving the American Revolution and inspiring independence movements across Latin America and the Caribbean. Its rejection of hereditary power echoed Rousseau's critique of arbitrary authority, while its focus on individual agency anticipated Marx's call for collective action against oppressive structures. By framing rebellion as a logical response to tyranny, Paine bridged philosophical inquiry with actionable resistance, demonstrating the power of rhetoric to mobilize collective action. His influence extended beyond the Americas, shaping the strategies of later subversive writers who sought to inspire mass movements against entrenched power. Paine's work influenced figures like Simón Bolívar, who drew on its ideas for Latin American independence, and activists who adopted its rhetorical clarity to advocate for reform. Common Sense established a model for revolutionary literature, its urgency and accessibility prefiguring the mobilizing force of the Communist Manifesto. By empowering citizens to challenge established authority, Paine highlighted the transformative potential of subversive thought, contributing to a legacy of democratic aspirations that would feed into the manifesto's synthesis of revolutionary ideas. Pragmatic subversion. Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, published in 1971, represents a post-manifesto evolution of subversive thought, adapting radical principles to the complexities of 20th-century democratic politics. Written during a period of civil rights struggles, anti-war protests, and urban unrest, Alinsky's text provided a practical guide for grassroots organizing, equipping marginalized communities with strategies to challenge institutional power. His 13 rules, such as "Make the enemy live up to its own book of rules," outlined a tactical approach that emphasized perception, pressure, and strategic disruption over direct confrontation. Unlike the Communist Manifesto's call for systemic upheaval, Alinsky prioritized incremental reforms within existing systems, using tools like public demonstrations, media campaigns, and coalition building. His work drew on Marxist critiques of economic power but reframed them for a democratic context where revolution was impractical, focusing on localized victories over grand transformations. Alinsky's organizing in Chicago's working-class neighborhoods shaped his belief in empowering communities, resonating with Rousseau's vision of collective governance and Paine's appeal to ordinary citizens. Rules for Radicals influenced a range of movements, from labor rights to environmental advocacy, with its tactics adopted by organizers like Cesar Chavez and modern activist groups. Alinsky's methods shaped campaigns for housing reform, workers' rights, and consumer protections, demonstrating the adaptability of subversive thought in modern political landscapes. By translating radical principles into actionable strategies, Alinsky extended the legacy of the Communist Manifesto, showing how its revolutionary spirit could inform pragmatic resistance. His emphasis on strategic pragmatism offered a new model for subversion, balancing ideological commitment with practical outcomes, reflecting the manifesto's influence while navigating the challenges of democratic systems. Cultural defiance. Levy's The Satanic Bible. Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible, published in 1969, introduced a provocative form of subversion by challenging religious authority through a philosophy of atheistic Satanism, crafted during the countercultural ferment of the 1960s. Using Satan as a symbol of individualism and rebellion, LaVey rejected Christian moral frameworks, advocating rationalism, personal empowerment, and hedonism over guilt and conformity. The text's 9 satanic statements, such as "Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence," were designed to provoke, exposing the arbitrary control of organized religion. Unlike the political focus of Marx or Alinsky, LaVey's subversion targeted cultural and spiritual norms, critiquing how faith enforced obedience through fear. His ideas echoed Rousseau's emphasis on individual autonomy and Paine's rejection of traditional authority, though his provocative symbolism marked a distinct departure. The Satanic Bible tapped into the 1960s rejection of mainstream values, aligning with the activist energy of Rules for Radicals while pursuing a cultural rebellion. Its lack of connection to any historical satanic tradition underscored its role as a modern construct, designed to disrupt societal norms. LaVey's founding of the Church of Satan in 1966 amplified the text's influence, attracting followers who embraced its philosophy as a rejection of conventional morality. By confronting religious hegemony, the Satanic Bible expanded the subversive tradition, its symbolic defiance resonating with the emancipatory spirit of the Communist Manifesto. Its impact lay in its ability to provoke reflection on the role of religion in shaping societal values, influencing countercultural movements and later secularist groups like the Satanic Temple. LaVey's work demonstrated the power of cultural subversion to challenge entrenched norms, extending the manifesto's legacy into the realm of spiritual and psychological rebellion. National subversion. Hitler's Mein Kampf. Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, published in 1925, represents a nationalistic form of subversive thought, exploiting Germany's post-World War I turmoil to challenge democratic and internationalist systems. Written after Germany's defeat and economic collapse, the text outlined a nationalist ideology aimed at dismantling liberal governance and establishing an authoritarian state. Hitler borrowed Marxist rhetoric about economic struggle to appeal to workers while promoting a vision of racial and national supremacy. His propaganda, leveraging rallies, radio, and print, undermined the Weimar Republic's democracy, rallying support through fear and promises of national revival. This subversive strategy was highly effective, capitalizing on Germany's humiliation, unemployment, and resentment over the Treaty of Versailles to mobilize millions. Initially, Hitler's policies, public works, rearmament, and nationalist rhetoric, restored economic stability and national pride, reducing unemployment from 30% in 1932 to near full employment by 1938. His core ideas of racial supremacy, aggressive expansionism, and authoritarian control were rooted in fundamental prejudices and political direction, ignoring important geopolitical maneuvers and long-term strategic realities. Unlike the Communist Manifesto's vision of universal liberation, Mein Kampf sought to entrench nationalism, replacing one form of domination with another. Hitler's implementation was catastrophic, driven by the flaws of his foresight, leading to World War II and Germany's ruin through strategic errors like invading the Soviet Union and underestimating Allied resolve. His initial success in mobilizing support collapsed under the weight of his delusional vision, dragging Germany into devastation. Mein Kampf's legacy is a cautionary tale of how subversive thought can lead to catastrophe, contrasting with the emancipatory aims of the Manifesto and other texts. The Manifesto as a catalyst for divergent ideologies. The Communist Manifesto served as a critical juncture, synthesizing the philosophical critiques of Rousseau and Paine into a focused economic and political framework that propelled a diverse array of subversive ideologies. Rousseau's challenge to monarchical authority and Paine's call for democratic rebellion provided the intellectual foundations that Marx distilled into a critique of capitalism, which in turn inspired Alinsky's pragmatic activism, LaVey's cultural defiance, and Hitler's distorted nationalism. Marx likely drew on Enlightenment ideas, while Alinsky adapted Marxist critiques for democratic contexts. LaVey's rejection of religious norms echoed Rousseau's and Paine's focus on individual freedom, and Hitler's propaganda misused Marxist themes of societal change. These texts share concerns about power, authority, and identity, with Rousseau and Paine challenging pre-modern hierarchies, Marx targeting capitalism, Alinsky and Levy confronting modern institutions, and Hitler exploiting economic unrest. The manifesto's role as a catalyst lies in its ability to consolidate earlier critiques and inspire divergent paths, from emancipatory to destructive, shaping the trajectory of political and cultural discourse. The lasting resonance of subversive thought. This selection of texts illuminates the role of the Communist Manifesto as a pivotal axis in subversive thought, weaving together earlier critiques and catalyzing a spectrum of radical ideas. Other works, like Lenin's What Is to Be Done? Or Emma Goldman's anarchist essays, could enrich this analysis, but these texts highlight the manifesto's influence across political, philosophical, and cultural domains. Rousseau's democratic vision, Paine's revolutionary spark, Alinsky's practical tactics, Levy's cultural defiance, and Hitler's warped nationalism reflect the diverse legacy of the manifesto's synthesis, each responding to its historical moment while contributing to a tradition of dissent. The manifesto's ability to bridge past and future subversive thought underscores its enduring impact, revealing the dynamic nature of radical ideas in reshaping society and challenging established power.